Hello and welcome to Talking Points here on WESN Content Capital. My name is Keaton Shaw.
And I'm Shaw Michael Small. And it's a beautiful morning in TNT, folks.
Oh, come on, man. Sound a bit happy.
What? I am happy. I am happy. In fact, there's even a little bit of positivity in today's daily review.
Wonder what that could be.
Now, as much as I said there's a little bit of positivity, we're going to have to wait for the dessert at the end. We start off with our first story this morning, and this is interesting because it's something that I have constantly asked the ASP when we have him, is the TTPS overworked, is the TTPS overworked? Now the Social and Welfare Association is claiming, the president is claiming that they're understaffed by about 1,400 officers, which, to be honest, it would not surprise me if that is the complete accurate truth. If that is completely fine, and for him to say, because it's just par for the course with regards to how our public entities, I guess you could say, are managed. They're either understaffed or way over bloated, and efficiency is just not necessarily a priority as opposed to other political considerations, and that includes internal office politics.
I'm actually not entirely surprised. I share that with you. In fact, I believe him. Because, listen, you have more brand new police vehicles than police officers. Imagine that the Toronto Police Service has Hilux. They have the Santa Fe SUVs available at their disposal, and they actually have high-end premium cars. You don't have officers to actually fill these vehicles. In fact, the only time I see more than 2 officers in a vehicle is when they go make a food run, right? And the thing is, I'm not bashing the Trans-Tobago Police Service because it's not necessarily their fault in terms of numbers, because there needs to be a recruitment exercise as well. Now, if you're going to say, well, listen, if police officers are involved in other police officers' deaths, okay, that is a factor to...
that's one thing, but I was just saying, the recruitment and training to some extent is the responsibility of any organization, right? This is not like the Commissioner of Police where you're talking about one role and an independent body is supposed to take care of that.
It is the fault of the police service, not the fault of the police officers. Right?
Well, the institutions and the systems, the service, the academy, not the officers that are actually on the street, except, of course, for the situations where you see some bad apples and they cause the service to come in this
When you ask the Minister of National Security, by the way, good morning, the Honourable Fitzgerald Hines, if you're watching Talking Points, you know how much we love you on this program. If you ask the Minister of National Security, if you ask the Commissioner of Police, what is your crime plan? You're not going to get any answer because there is no crime plan, right? But the thing is, if by some miracle they were to come up with a plan, they don't necessarily have the resources from the human resource capacity to actually effectively carry out such plans. If 1,400 officers are missing, and just bear in mind, this is coming from the Social Welfare Association. So this is more or less the Trans-Tobago Police Service, their union, right? So you have to take it with a pinch of salt. But again, I wouldn't be entirely surprised if this is the truth. The thing is, response time is affected. Investigations are affected. Dealing with any situation at all, and any urgent situation is affected.
But beyond the shortfall of officers, another figure was in the report, and that included that 330 officers were currently under suspension. So I understand it's supposed to be a few bad apples, and granted, technically speaking, 330 is but a few when compared to 6,491. But 330 just in and of itself, this is not no small number, right?
No, well, you see, I can look at it from 2 sides. One, I applaud the Trans-Tobago Police Service for trying to get rid of the bad apples.
Well, we don't necessarily know why they were suspended.
No, I understand that. But again, we go with face value because let's admit, reporting is not that great, right? The other view that I could take a look at is 330 officers on suspension. Okay, give us details, as my co-host just mentioned, as to why they are suspended. And at the same time, are they receiving their full salary while on suspension? For how long have these officers been on suspension? Because if you have an officer that's been on suspension for 6 months pending an investigation, so you mean to tell me a depleted Trinidad and Tobago police service not only has to investigate their own officers, but they also have to investigate these serious crimes taking place in Trinidad. If you take a look at the pages shown between last week, Friday, and today, it is plagued with home invasions.
Yes.
It is plagued with break-ins.
In fact, one of the headlines literally was another home invasion.
Right, and it's plagued with murders, people getting shot and killed, injured. Listen, Trinidad and Tobago is a paradise for crime and criminality. Right? Trinidad and Tobago is a paradise for crime and criminality. And I dare somebody to try and tell me otherwise. Right? It seems as though criminals have more freedom than the ordinary man on the street. Because they do whatever they want and they get away with it. The point is, if we have a depleted service that cannot deal with this situation, I don't always take on the Honourable Minister, because he has no clue what he's saying or doing half the times. But quite frankly, if we have a depleted service and he's not open and honest with the people of Trinidad and Tobago, he doesn't deserve to be in that position at all.
My final thing is to say that senior leadership of the police service, they're caught on a rock and a hard place. I understand, you can't say doom and gloom, but it's similar to what we see out of the government, out of like the Minister of Finance. You can't give us messages of positivity, then acknowledge that there are issues. And because we're basically caught in the middle of which one is the truth? Are things going well or are things not going well? The shortfall of officers, I think, is no small issue. And then when you add the suspensions on top of that, so you're looking at 17 to 1800 of a shortfall operationally. Very
quickly, let me just state my final point is, earlier Edward Christopher has addressed this. As much as she wants to speak and say spirituality is needed, right? Yes, spirituality is needed. Officers are also needed in those stations and in those vehicles to respond to these instances of crime and investigate it. She needs to address this, and failure to do so will be a big failure on her part, and need I say possibly a stain. This is a situation that is absolutely detrimental, and they haven't been open and honest with us.
It seems as though training is the problem. Now, I don't necessarily know if there's a bottleneck at the academy or what's going on, but this seems to be something that she could sort out in relatively short time. I'm not saying she could sort it out tomorrow, but it's not necessarily something like a long-term problem that crime overall is. Right? This seems like something that she can get sorted out to deal with the manpower issues. It's not about just getting more and more and more and more officers recruited and trained. It's about getting the proper quality, yes, but the proper levels of manpower.
So then,
because we don't want the TTPS to be all of a sudden turned into a jobs program that's overbloated as well.
That is what it is and what it has become. So what is the quality of the current police service or police force that's available to us?
What you're saying is, about 1,400 short, 300 plus suspended, and then however many within the actual ranks that are just there to collect a check. So the shortfall might be over 2,000 on a practical level. But let's move on. This isn't the first time he's done it, but I applaud the effort. Guyana's President Irfan Ali, he is once again, speaking about regional food security, which that's what I appreciate. He's not just talking about Guyanese food security. He is, I believe, the Caribbean's head of a committee in the U.S. under the Biden administration to deal with the issue of food security, if I'm not mistaken. But with that said, this, I think, is just one of those hidden issues. Energy is one, yes. Food security is the other. And we take energy for granted, but we've been feeling the food security situation in TNT. And it's interesting that, Dr. Keith Rowley, our Prime Minister, he is in charge of the energy side of the relationship with CARICOM and the Caribbean and the US. And we seem to be all in on that. But the other areas, we were not necessarily following our fellow nations as closely, because I don't really see the follow-up or any sort of participation or any sort of acknowledgement of the Guyanese president's calls for the region needing to do something as a whole to help with its food security situation.
So now that I've actually calmed down expressing my frustrations with the issues of national security, this is raised, and it's another frustrating issue, simply because the problem that we have is not the conversation. The conversation, the dialogue has been on everybody's tongues for how many decades now?
Yep.
And Mohammed Irfan Ali has only, Dr. Mohammed Irfan Ali, my apologies, has only made efforts to try and further this dialogue. The bigger issue are the regional heads, which is inclusive of Trinidad and Tobago, and implementation. If I were to take a microscopic view of TNT, I cannot name one major project, one major initiative, or any sort of thing that has been implemented to say we're heading in the right direction. Because, subsidies and grants available to farmers is all well and good. Don't get me wrong. Is that the be-all and end-all? Well, the Minister of Agriculture seems to think so.
What I don't understand is, we're a twin island nation and we don't take fishing. It seems as though fishing is is the red-headed stepchild of the red-headed stepchild that is the agricultural sector, right? It's the unfavored of the unfavored. We're an island nation and we don't even necessarily look to try to get any sort of formal controls in place with regards to our fish stock and fish distribution. And to the point where now, I mean, we've had him on Talking Point, you've had him on AM Prime yesterday morning, or the Tobago official
Yes, yesterday morning.
Has to complain about the potential of Bajan fishermen overfishing Tobago waters. So it's interesting. You would have other coastal countries or island nations, you know, fishing would be such a big part of their economy, such a big part of their food supply. But for us, it's just a drop in the bucket. Maybe we've overfished our waters or allowed others to overfish our waters. But, I mean, we don't even have any sort of, to my understanding, we don't have much of a deep sea fishing because there's a whole Atlantic Ocean out to the east. So, I don't know. I'm not a biologist nor fisherman, so I don't know what's available out there, but not everything has to be done with a pirogue. There's no large-scale operation here with fishing.
Forgive me for having to digress from your point. I mean, there's a possibility that very soon we might have to start consuming snails because at $5 a kilo, it turns out to be very cheap, right?
Or we might also very soon see Chinese fishing vessels come and call for our waters.
China is already in the process of building $1 billion fish processing plant in Guyana. So there is a possibility.
Yeah,
that
we'll
will
be seeing
happen
them.
soon. You know, but for a moment, also focus on the reality. The reality is that nothing is going to be done about the food import bill or trying to focus more on local products or local produce simply because who are the individuals with the power or those with the majority that import food here in TNT? We don't want to get them upset, do we?
I was now going to say, because we don't have a big donor that is a food manufacturer that I know of on that scale that could push back against other interests.
So the same company or the same company or the same brand that is now producing steel pan here in Trinidad and Tobago, right? The Trinidad and Tobago Musical Instrument Company, if I'm not mistaken, that's what it's called. It's the same company that also heavily imports food, right? You do not want to get any, and no government would want to get on their bad side or get them upset, because it might be detrimental to their time in office or even them getting into office. And that's the fact of it. We're not going to do anything, and we have not taken it seriously, because guess what? We don't think about TNT overall. We don't look at the bigger picture. Our thinking has been concentrated on only a few benefiting.
Well, folks, I mean, I'll just say this. Where's the big fishing company? We don't have one. On an island nation, that's interesting. But I did promise some good news, and it was a little bit of good news. Yesterday morning, a doctor at the emergency ward...
No, it was Monday morning.
Monday morning.
Yeah.
At Eric Williams Medical Sciences Complex, he was able to talk a lady down from attempting to, well, jump from the a second story perch, I guess you could say. She was standing basically on the strut of a support column. And he was able to get her to not jump, to come down, get off the proverbial ledge, so to say. And I do find that encouraging that there are still signs of that concern, that human concern for a fellow citizen, for a fellow human being. It kind of gets lost in not just the rat race of day-to-day life, but also with all of the crime stories that we see. If one cannot discern any sort of caring for one's fellow man in those stories. And maybe, of course, it's too much of a concentration of an outlier, right? Obviously, not everybody in the nation is criminals, otherwise the country would fall apart immediately. But it was still nice to see just somebody doing something for somebody else, no profit involved, no other motivations or agendas. And Adam Woman was saved.
To Dr. Edson Bree, and I hope I've pronounced your name correctly, I can only commend your patience, because it's 2 hours that he stayed with the individual, and he even utilized breathing exercises. He tried to build some level of a relationship within that time. Thank you for what you've done, and you exercised not only good judgment, but you exercised a lot of patience and understanding in trying to deal with the situation. And you're right, this is good news. I only hope that this lady recovers and gets the treatment that is necessary, because mental health is a huge problem in TNT that we seem to ignore.
Well, sometimes all it takes is, you might have a dark thought in a moment in time, and you just need somebody to break that cycle of that thinking.
I understand that.
So I hope, yes. But yes, you need to be sure.
Talking somebody out of, first of all, for a person to even get to that stage of wanting to commit suicide, thinking about suicide is one thing. Going through that process, it takes a lot of pain and a lot of courage, right? And for somebody to try and talk that individual out of it, as I said, Dr. Brady, I think the entire nation is full of gratitude, but also very much proud, and all I can say is that other doctors out there and other individuals can only take inspiration and a lesson from Dr. Brady's efforts.
Folks, we're more or less well over time. We have to take a break. When we come back, we're going to tackle, an interesting problem that seems to come up more often than not. I'm not sure if it's annually, but sargassum seaweed plagues our shores and the shores of other Caribbean nations once again. And then later on, we'll have our guests to continue these talks on national security and crime in the nation and some of the implications of what's being asked for. Stay tuned. This is Talking Point on WESN, your content capital.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Forces flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Site, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m. only on WESN, Content Capital.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment, in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. And sargassum seaweed, it's something that you might not have remembered it as a child. In fact, in my childhood, I don't necessarily remember this phenomenon happening. The only seaweed I saw on any sort of consistent basis was at Pigeon Point, which made Pigeon Point not necessarily the beach that it was the least
Still there, by the way, I actually do not like Pigeon Point because of that.
Yes. But however, now, all the way to Florida, sargassum seaweed is piling upon, inches on coastal beaches. Apparently, within 24 to 48 hours of it washing up on shore, it starts to rot. It's an interesting issue, I guess you could say, because it affects local marine wildlife and ecologies. That could be a problem, again, for our local fishermen, as well as for just the enjoyment of our local beaches. Yes, we don't necessarily have the tourists, but we still, enjoy our own fun in the sun. The idea then, of course, is when you have a problem, what could you do about it? And my co-host, he did find something for a little bit back in the day, but it does beg the question, could we utilize something like this? Just watch, cue this.
Meet Cavendish Atwell, an 82-year-old entrepreneur from Syndicate Lane, St. Lawrence Gap. He has always had a knack for being innovative. An example of his creativity is the way in which he has been utilizing seaweed for the past 4 years in his gardens and to sell to others for use as a fertilizer.
In retirement, you want to do something, and I used to go down to Bath and so regular and see the amount of moss and things down there, and it reminded me that, something Graham Hall used to send cow carts and so down to Dover Beach, when the moss washing, and taking it back to Graham Hall. So I decided, something could be done with this moss, and then I started to work with it.
Before the influx of sargassum seaweed on several beaches across the island, Mr. Atwell had been visiting Bath Beach in St. John on a regular basis to collect seaweed for his various projects. According to him, the process of bringing seaweed to fertilizer is a simple one.
This is the first phase of it. Now this here dry out a bit, but then you come off the beach, it is in this form. Right? Then, when you get that far, you come over here and put through a second drain where the air passes under and put, see, the wind comes under here and lifts the salt out. You can actually test it with like this, right? And then you get that far, you put it flat down over here, right? Flat down over there with metal to give it that crisp drying thing, right? And then from there, then you could test it with your hand, and you could bring it up here and just run through. 2 You're going to see that relief it, ain't it? Huh? Yeah.
Currently, Mr. Atwell sells his products to various supermarkets across the island and also to persons who are involved in backyard gardening. Mr. Atwell believes that Barbadians should see the seaweed as a blessing and is suggesting that government could look into investing in this new venture.
I feel that the government should use one of those factories, either Port Vale or the X1, for 3 or 4 months every year, producing not only seaweed, the sea moss and soda washing all around the country and turn into fertilizer. It is simple, you only have to get started. If they can get the NCC people to rake it up, put it in a bag also, and get it there, and then it could be worked on, they could get it desanded and all those. Same way you get the sand out of it here, I'd be willing to show them how they can get the sand out of it, and we can mix it with the bagasse, you can mix it with the trees from the tambourine and all those evergreen trees that we throw it in the dump, right? Instead of burning outside fertilizer.
With the influx of sargassum seaweed expected to continue for some time, Mr. Atwell could be regarded as an example to others of how creativity and entrepreneurship can turn a potential problem into profit.
That video courtesy of Barbados Government Information Service. And Keaton, 2 interesting things to note. One, it seems as though because of human activity and runoffs from farms into rivers, then into the sea, the area where the sargassum blooms used to be an area that was low, that had low nutrients. Now with agricultural
as
runoffs,
chemicals wash into the sea. Yeah.
Right, but we're not talking like insecticides. We're talking about fertilizer type chemicals. It's changing the conditions. That's why we're seeing these incredible amounts of sargassum seaweed going, again, from TNT all the way to Florida. One of the other interesting things is, and that then suggests why it's potentially a good source to utilize as input to create fertilizers. But then there's also the fact that potentially with some processing, because sargassum seaweed apparently contains a level of arsenic, so you have to process that out, it has been eaten in certain parts of the world and can be utilized as a food source.
Well, it's actually sargassum is actually a source that is used to produce agar, which is very good for weight loss. But according to the National Health Institute, based in the United States, it's also excellent for skincare. Once processed. Furthermore, there have been studies which suggest that sargassum, as by this entrepreneur in Barbados points out, is a very good fertilizer, because what happens when it loses its buoyancy, it sinks to the bottom of the sea, and it becomes a source of nutrients for other plants in the ocean as well as fish. But it's also used to help with erosion, because it's very good nutrition. It's also very compact once utilized properly.
Right.
So there are many benefits to sargassum, which is why I like how he's suggesting it could be seen as a blessing. Now, it's a lot. Too much sargassum is not good at all. And the smell is absolutely
because it's
terrible.
rotting.
It's rotting. So it actually smells like rotting fish. But there is opportunity here, because with the cost of feed going up around the world, sargassum, when properly processed, could be used as feed for livestock. There are benefits to show that it is very much nutritious for livestock, and it is used in other parts of the world. So from problem to profit, which is an excellent line for this particular video and this particular segment, Trinidad and Tobago, there are benefits from sargassum. Could we see those benefits? Is it going to take some young entrepreneur to actually see those benefits and try to utilize it? Well, I hope we take some inspiration from that.
It seems as though at least Florida sees sargassum March to October. So while seasonal, it is a good enough chunk of the year that you could potentially try to figure out how to, commercialize this, natural product without having to, without having to worry about consistency, without having to say, well, but it's only available at X amount of times or X number of months per year. And you're right. Not only could it be a boon to our agricultural sector, but we already import seaweed for Japanese-style seaweed salads and in sushi restaurants, and even certain convenience stores might have it just as a separate salad. There's some sort of, part of a gourmet offerings, or like coleslaw and salads and stuff like that, and dips and what have you. And you can't say that there's no demand for seaweed as a product in TNT. It's just, yeah, we'll import it, but when we have an abundance here, are we willing to make use of it?
March to October, that's what, about 7 months of the year. With the amount of seaweed that you're getting in that 7 months, we could more than... 8 months. 8 months. The amount of seaweed that you're getting within that 8-month span. I mean, if you, I don't know what was the last time that you were able to drive along the coast in Lowlands, at the back of Magdalena, along that stretch there.
I can imagine.
It's blanketed. The sea is blanketed. The sea is brown, actually. The water is brown. And there's barely a spot of sand in sight.
It would be a shame if all we do is clean up the beaches by bagging it and dumping it.
But we're not even cleaning it up.
Well,
I can't say that we are. I mean, I not in Trinidad. I've been to a number of beaches in Tobago, and the seaweed has just overtaken the beach and the coastline. Now,
there is, I guess you could say there's some hope to say, well, in the long run, this might benefit the coastal ecosystems and shores, and the waters just off of Tobago. But yes, the amount could be damaging in the short term, maybe even in the long term, depending on how it's managed and a whole host of other factors that I don't know of. So it's questionable if it could be left alone to its own devices and to see what happens. Because yes, usually with nature, you don't want to interfere with it, but we already technically interfered from the source. So now we do have to, this is not necessarily a natural occurring phenomenon to some extent, so we can't expect that nature will figure it out. We might not like the answer.
The thing is, we could figure it out. So 3 things. And I don't even know if the government has actually seen this or even thinks about this. But
somebody's probably already told them.
3 things. 1, fertilizer, as exemplified by that video.
Yep.
2, feed for livestock.
Yep.
Could help our situation because, as you know, there was an entire issue with the shortage and the cost. And 3, the production of agar.
And I just like to point out, and you're right, where the gentleman said this could be a blessing. Food security, we just spoke about it being a problem in the region, and here we have, for lack of a better way to put it, extra biomass, a source coming from the Atlantic that we never necessarily had before 2011 or so. Why can't we utilize it?
Oh, we've always had it, not to this extent.
Not to this extent. Yes, exactly.
Extent. Yeah. Anyway, let's take a break here on Talking Point, but we hope we've got your minds jogging a bit this morning, and maybe there's opportunity for you. So I'm not saying go out there and grab as many bags of sargassum as you can, but if you think that you can utilize it and use your entrepreneurial skills as well, then maybe it's just a second income for you. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back after this.
This May, the spectacular event you've been waiting for is coming. May 27th, celebrate amazing North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Festival grounds, Blanchisseuse. Born here, played here.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered,
the conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Only on WESN Content Capital.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the right and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. And we continue our discussion on the crime situation in TNT. Of course, we mentioned it earlier this week. Recently, businessmen, business chambers, they've been calling for more access to firearm users' licenses. And they've even been calling for, well, a greater use of the death penalty as crime goes out of control. I don't know if, ladies and gentlemen, you have noticed that home invasions and robberies seem to be more brazen, more blatant, and potentially more violent. Joining us to speak on the matter, as she usually does on Thursdays, we have Opposition Senator Jayanti Lachminial, member of the Joint Select Committee on National Security. Good morning, Senator Medial.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me again.
No, thank you for joining us.
So, business community, and I'm sure you might have heard from members, the desire to defend yourself. But we do live in a society where there's also a very real concern, not just of vigilante justice, where potentially the wrong person might be attacked in retaliation, but also once we have access to firearms, disputes in everyday life might turn quick to violence. So, is this a balance, a compromise that might be looking just too attractive to people now and we might be willing to take the risks?
So, firstly, a couple of things. Home invasions have now become sort of the crime of choice. It's becoming very, very, it's not linked to the typical drug and gang warfare. It's really just, you know, robberies taking place in the sanctity of your home, and it's becoming way too commonplace. One can or may say it's linked to, you know, reduced economic activity, hardship, etc. People resort to this type of crime. I'm not saying that hardship is an excuse for doing that. Of course, it's disgusting. It should be condemned in the strongest possible terms. But at the end of the day, we all know that there's always there are lots of underlying social factors, and we have to deal with those things in the long term to address them. Now, is it a solution? One of the first things that pop into my mind is a murder that took place in San Fernando of a young lady, a teacher, from an estranged husband who had, I think, a number of legal firearms. So whilst you're exactly right, it's a balancing exercise. I am more concerned about domestic disputes than I am about vigilante justice per se. Because the domestic issues, when you have crimes of passion, it's very easy when people have easy access to legal firearms, that when your emotions are out of control, you tend to perhaps use them irresponsibly. The critical thing here is having a proper system for the grant of FULs. And you don't just have to have a system for the grant, but the renewal of the licenses. The law actually provides for a renewal process and a sort of a check and balance system. You are supposed to pay the fee every year to the TTPS to get your license renewed and so on. Why is it it should not be automatic. That's my first thing. It should not be that you are allowed to pay money and renew a FUL if you have one. So if you qualify for the FUL, it's almost like continuous professional development. You're supposed to show every time you renew, or maybe not every year, maybe you can do it every 2 years or something like that. But you're supposed to show that you're doing the requisite training. The police should be checking to make sure there's no change in your circumstances, for example. And I'm not saying this applies to everybody, but if I were the police in the district and I knew somebody had an FUL, and I knew, for example, they came to renew their firearm, but they're going through a very nasty divorce, custody battle, something like that with a estranged spouse, the spouse has applied for protection order against them and so on, that is something that will weigh, as a factor that will weigh on my mind if I'm renewing an FUL. But again, we have silos. So you could actually go to the courts and take out a protection order against somebody and come to the police station in your district and ask them to serve that person. And this estranged spouse or whoever it is you have taken out that protection order against, go and walk into that same station and pay their $200 or $500 or whatever it is and renew their FUL. And there's no connectivity between those things. Now, isn't that ridiculous? So the system has to be fixed, and the system has to work in such a way that there is a responsible method of managing legal firearms. I have absolutely nothing against people who are responsible, trained, and psychologically, mentally, emotionally, physically capable of managing a firearm, for them having firearms to protect themselves and their families. I think it is quite advisable in this situation and the circumstances we live under. You have a cash-intensive business. You have to. I was as a drive-through ATM, and that's where I live, that I use all the time, right? Laziness, and it's very close to those drop boxes where you can put cash in.
Yes.
I was there using the ATM and I saw someone getting out of the vehicle to drop cash, and you should just see the way this man looked. I mean, he just looked so terrified. He came in a very, you could look at someone and know he looked like a very well-to-do businessman and so on, but he's driving a van, very simple. I'm sure this man has probably some really nice vehicles, just based on how he was dressed, etc. But you try to be as low-key as you can, and the man is literally looking like he was about to have a panic attack, dropping off his cash into this thing. And if you have a cash-intensive business, you are a walking target, and there's nothing wrong once you have you're altogether capable for you to have a firearm. People target. I've noticed a lot of the home invasions are happening at homes where there are businesses. The one in Arangua is the Davy, Apala. The one in Davy, I actually know that business. It's right on the main road. It's a place where people will be spending cash, and people assume that there's cash on premises, right? So in situations like that, I think that I have nothing against the responsible grant of firearms.
A couple of things. One, I think you've just made an argument for businesses to go cashless and for there to be a greater push for cashless businesses. That doesn't necessarily resolve the problem of people still being fearful within their business place or within the environment. But also, it's the very first point. I'm glad that you raised it, that there is domestic abuse can also be linked to bigger issues in terms of crime. However, the flip side of that is, isn't it going to be very difficult? Because as much as you want to carry out physical testing and psychometric testing and all these things in order for somebody to be granted their FUL, and when they actually pay their annual fee to be granted that again, in many instances, domestic abuse victims don't even report these crimes or are very fearful of reporting these crimes, as has been mentioned. So how are we going to really get to the bottom of this or figure out the truth before individuals are actually granted these licenses?
Yeah, I mean, that is a challenge. There is actually, I believe, a requirement. I don't know if it's in the law, I can't recall, but I know procedurally at least, when you apply for your FUL, if you live with someone or you're married to them, they have to consent. Again, if you do that 10 years ago when you get the FUL, no, I might want to revoke my consent later on. So you have to do that follow-up. But you're right, a lot of people don't report it. If you're a spouse and you're being abused and so on, and the police come to your home and say, hi, your husband has applied for a firearm, would you object? I don't know that the woman living in a domestic violence situation is going to tell the police, I object because he's beat me.
The flip side of this as well is that I can pass all these tests today. I can say, okay, he's been evaluated on all levels, but then tomorrow I can trip.
Of course, and that's a risk, and that's why I think the word balance is why you have to balance. So do we look at better testing? Do we look at better methods? Do we look at more spontaneous home visits and follow-ups to make sure firearms are kept in proper safes away from children? Do we fix the system and try to balance it against the risk of, because you have to weigh the risk of somebody tripping off today and using the firearm to kill their spouse, but even though they've passed all the tests, versus the risk of a home invasion. I think right now the majority of people in Trinidad might think the risk of them becoming a victim of a home invasion or a violent crime might actually be higher than their spouse tripping off on them, even though they've done all the testing. That is to say, it's very hard to predict and to stop domestic crimes. The key thing there really might be more of a social intervention, so that people encourage people then to report and to leave and to do, as opposed to just saying, well, no firearms for anybody because chances are you might trip off and kill your spouse.
Well, of course, as with anything, there's no silver bullet. This is the best answer for all categories that we're considering. Less lethal weapons was in the news, not too long ago with regards to pepper spray and potentially tasers. Now, the thing is, their use might be safer than firearms. It might not necessarily be as lethal for members of the public to utilize that if they feel that they're attacked. And if utilizing domestic abuse, it wouldn't automatically lead to serious or critical injury. It still could, but it's not necessarily going to happen. However, it could be that perhaps some people think, well, the criminals aren't going to fear pepper spray as much as a gun, or it might be harder to defend myself than with a firearm. It might not have the reach or the range or the stopping power or the intimidating factor. But have you heard anything with regards to utilizing these other options? Because while they might have their cons, they also do have their pros for society. It's just that we haven't really seen much out of it, recently.
So a big push for the pepper spray in particular came when we had the candlelight vigil movement, the Andrea Barrett issues, etc., because of the fear that particularly young women felt being in taxis and so on. That's a sort of, again, the scenario being you're sitting in a vehicle and the driver starts taking a wrong turn into some lonely track, or they start grabbing you in the backseat of the vehicle, because it's really a setup with a driver and a passenger and they attack you, etc. You can quickly try to defend yourself. Less applicable in a situation where 6 bandits enter your home armed with cutlasses at the neck of your grandchild, and they have a firearm and they're pointing it at you. What you gonna do? Whip out your pepper spray and walk up to them with the firearm and spray them. You understand? So I mean that whole idea of the non-lethal weapons really was for a particular scenario. I think it's applicable. Saying that though, however, I'm very disappointed because I remember this debate very well because I was one of the people who really pushed on that pepper spray issue. We were told that this whole system is going to be totally electronic and it's going to be a quick bam, bam, bam. You just send in this, that. That was, I think, about a year ago, 2 years ago, something. And I don't even know that anybody has actually gotten the license yet. I think that's a few people have been granted the import permits. And I don't know that it's actually widely available on the market. So I can't say that anybody has really benefited from that law that we took a very long time to debate in Parliament. I thought that the process was far too cumbersome. I think many of the independent senators also agreed, but the government was very concerned about the abuse of pepper spray. It's amazing that we have a lot of emphasis and we hear a lot coming out of the government when it comes to the abuse of things that people may wish to use to defend themselves, firearms, legal licensed firearms, pepper spray, etc. But we don't hear a lot about the absence of a very wide and performing CCTV camera network. We don't hear a lot about the absence of enough police officers. I saw today that the association saying they're 1,400 people short. Yes. Officers. We are not seeing things which could really make a bigger difference.
You made a comment off it just before we started that one of the misconceptions people have is, we call for the death penalty, and this is not the first time. The business chambers recently are the latest call. But we have to detect the criminals first. I think that philosophy also could be applied with the use of firearms to defend yourself, because there is the fear, and my co-host has mentioned it many a times before, about vigilante justice, but that is justice without a trial to prove guilt, and potentially could cause innocence to be wrapped up. Any concern with regards to that?
Yeah, I mean, again, because we are in a place right now where, look, I don't like to use the term, but I was reading a book written by this guy from, he's a Harvard professor, but he talks about, he had a lot to do with the movements and leadership and so on in Africa. And he talks about failed states. And I feel like we are quickly becoming a failed state, because the number one, and he was making the argument that delivery of political goods, public goods, the number one public good that is supposed to be delivered to the country is security. And if you're not delivering security, it's just everything breaks down after that. And that's where we've reached. Now, when you're living in a high-tension environment like that, it's very easy for people to want to take the law into their own hands. I've heard the calls for death penalty. I'm always quite, I wouldn't say amused, but disturbed that people blame parliamentarians and say, why don't you all pass the law to have the death penalty? And I'm like, that is the law. Right? That is the law. We don't need to pass a law. That is the law. The death penalty is the law. I don't necessarily agree with it. That's my personal view, not a political one, not a legal one. The death penalty is the law. It is to implement the law. And that's what we have in this country. We have an implementation deficit. Now, the point is, yes, you have to actually detect. We have a detection rate of something like 13 or 14%. That's less than 5. Less than 1 in 5 criminals are being caught. So, and you have to catch them, you have to prosecute them, you have to convict them, and then you have to actually implement the death penalty according to the law. Now, the second thing is that the death penalty is only applicable to murder. All of these home invasions, all of these sexual offenses and so on, if it doesn't result in a murder, the death penalty isn't applicable. Yes, it might instill some fear in the mind of the average criminal if this man, but I mean, I don't know that it really is going to make a short-term difference. What I believe will make a much bigger difference is if criminals believe there is a very much stronger likelihood that they're going to be caught. If it is that if I were to pick up the newspaper and instead of seeing home invasion, I could see, man denied bail when police present CCTV footage of him committing crime. CCTV results in arrest of XYZ. Man convicted not because the witness dead after the 10 years that the matter comes up in the court, or because the witness is afraid and don't want to give evidence, or because the witness fails under cross-examination, etc. I want to hear that the CCTV was there, capture you there. I want to hear that we pick up your DNA on the crime scene. I want to, those are the things that will make a difference in the mind of the criminal thinking about going into somebody's home and robbing them and beating them.
Well, Senator, this is where we have to end the conversation, but I especially like the last couple of points. I think we tried to make them, but you made it very well there. We need the detection rate to be higher and the conviction rate to be higher.
Definitely. Thanks again for having me, and we will chat again soon. Take care.
Have a good day. Keep well.
Thank you, Senator. Folks, now we have to break up for news on the hour. When we return, we'll ask you the question of the day, which is related to crime. We'll want to get your take on the use of firearms for your own protection. Stay tuned to Talking Point. News next.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Shoguna's businessman murdered for his car. TTPS inaugurates fraud squad office in Tobago. Prime Minister turns sword on utility-scale solar power project. Regionally, 2 regional airlines to fly Guyana-Canada route. And internationally, missile launch triggers evacuation order in Japan. Now for the details. 1 man is dead following a failed carjacking in Shogunas on Wednesday. Reports say 48-year-old businessman Richard Ali of Bilger Road, Shogunas, was shot by a bandit trying to steal his vehicle. The car reportedly crashed in the process, and Ali and the would-be bandit was reportedly rushed to the hospital, where Ali succumbed to his injuries. Citizens, as well as officers of the fraud squad, are set to benefit from fewer delays and more resources for the reporting and investigation of fraudulent activities in the Tobago Division, the TTPS says. This was revealed on March 28th by Assistant Commissioner of Police, White Collar Crime Division, Wendell Lucas, as the TTPS launched the Tobago Fraud Squad office at the Shervan Road Police Station. The Tobago Fraud Squad office is the first of its kind on the island and in the TTPS's history. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley officially turned the sod for the construction of a utility-scale solar plant at Brecon Castle on Wednesday. The PM said this development will benefit the country significantly.
If this project was in Tobago, it would have satisfied 100% of the electrical power consumption in Tobago. That is the scale of this project, even though it's just about 10% of our national consumption.
In regional news now, 2 regional airlines, the Dominican Republic-based Sky Canada and Suriname's Fly Always, will be offering flights from Guyana to Canada, with the former set to begin service from June 1st. Sky Canada's entrance to the Guyana market was announced yesterday by President Irfan Ali, who also informed via his Facebook page that he had met with the company's CEO, Frank Diaz-Gonzalez, at the office of the president and that he welcomed the company. In international news now, a North Korean missile sparked fear on the Japanese northern island of Hokkaido Thursday after the government's emergency alert system warned residents to take cover. Millions of people received a J alert or evacuation order shortly before 8 a.m. urging them to seek shelter as the missile could land on or near the island. But soon after, fear turned into anger and confusion as the evacuation order was lifted amid reports that it had been sent in error, with local officials saying there was no possibility of the missile hitting the island, and Tokyo later confirming it had fallen outside Japanese territory in waters off the east coast of the Korean peninsula. Well, that was your news to the hour on WESN. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for watching.
This May, the spectacular event you've been waiting for is coming. May 27th, celebrate amazing North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Festival grounds, Blanchie shares. Born here, played here.
Welcome back. It's a talking point here on WSN Content Capital. Well, Sean, I think it's about that time.
Yes, I mean, we've brought it up and we thought that this might be a good question to ask the viewers. Of course, it's question of the day. Self-defense. We just had a talk with Opposition Senator and member of the Joint Select Committee on National Security, Jan Taylor Schmidl, about some of the pros and cons of it. But what do you think about it? Do you feel the need for self-defense weapons to protect your home? It could be pepper spray and tasers if that's all you're comfortable. It could be a firearm. But do you think you need to take measures to protect yourself beyond just burglar proofing? Beyond just, lights and community watch? You want to have some sort of self-defense weapon. In case you get a home invasion, you will look to fight back. It's a risky proposition, folks. We're interested to hear those of you who are willing to take that risk, or those of you who think, no, I'm not willing to take it down that path.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's open up the phone lines where you, the viewer, can now share your thoughts and opinions with us. Yes, we've asked you this question, and we hope that you share with us your honest thoughts and give us an honest answer, an honest response. But if there's anything else that you'd like to comment on, or anything else that you'd like to share of which Sean and I did not cover, well, feel free to do so. We only ask that you be mindful of the time, kindly call in now, and also, please, I ask you to not go overboard. Also, be respectful of others and other viewers. We're open to your opinions, but we all have to, if we are all to share our thoughts, we must be respectful to one another. And finally, kindly mute your television. Yeah, as I always say, Sean and I don't necessarily like to hear our voices too much.
That's true. That is very true. But folks, again, the question, do you feel the need for self-defense weapons to protect your home? Home invasions are so frequent. One headline basically read, another home invasion happened.
Long ago, a self-defense weapon was your mom's rubber slipper, because she could, anywhere in the house, she could just throw it. So if there were any intruders, that was long ago.
Long ago, if there were people in the house, the intruders would, wave off the attack. Yeah, think twice.
In fact, what's a security measure that some people started practicing? Is they would leave their home. They would either switch on the television, leave the television on, or switch on the radio. Mm-hmm. It gives just that impression that somebody's home. Where we're not going into another time. And criminals have become so bold and don't care that I was reading one story about the invasions taking place in Valsing, and that's just one community. That's just one community. But one lady was saying that it was her older father that was actually outside, and after the thieves broke into the house, he was shouting for them. Thieves actually went outside. They locked the door, but the father found a crate of empty glass bottles, was brave enough to actually pelt the glass bottles at the intruders, who were apparently armed with a gun. And they ran away. But Anyway, let's take this call from Shagonas. Good morning, caller.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
I want to again congratulate the presenters this morning. And my first reaction to the question is yes, definitely, but with checks and balances in place to ensure that there's responsible use. I am an ordinary housewife, but I want to be able to be armed, trained, and have all the checks and balances in place to shoot them damn criminals when they come by my gate or jump into my yard. That's the first point. But I want to make a bigger point of a bigger issue. And when a few months ago the police commissioner said by June a reduction in crime, what bothered me is whether there was any statistics or any plan or so that allowed her to make that prediction, and we don't know. One of the things that I am hearing all over the place in this government and presently is digitization. Digitization doesn't mean having a computer you put your record in, you know. It's a whole management system, and I think the police service should look at having its own dedicated statistical office or research capacity. I don't know if they have now, but if they do, it's not effective. Where they can collect the data. Who are these people? What is their background? What areas are they coming from? Who are they targeting? In the case of their background, demographics, social services have to kick in and find out whether these people are, you know, abandoned children or have difficulty family life and so on, the social aspect. In the case of the police, a police vehicle should be able to tap in and see right away, PAZ, something, other, that car belongs to so-and-so, it's coming from that area, etc. And have some clue. They can also have names, and that is what a full-scale comprehensive digitization is about. I refer to the case of Estonia in Europe. It took them 2 years to fully digitize their entire country. And I remember once attending a conference where somebody made a statement. The reason developed countries are where they are is because they plan on the basis of hard facts, evidence, and statistics. And if the police service were to get somebody who understands that, not about computerization. I mean, I'm trying weeks now to get online and nobody answering, no response coming. Fully digitized, integrated approach. You have the long range, where the CSO, Statistical Office, Central Statistical Office does the job. But for the police service, given the nature of the crime, we want to know where these crimes are happening. Who are these people?
Yeah.
And so we need to put that in place. Don't tell me by June we're going to have a reduction in crime. Reduction in what kind of crime? Where?
All right, caller. Thank you very much for your contribution this morning.
I know you're going to cut me off, but the second thing is this. At a time of this, we need leadership. We need leadership. Somebody to get up on the TV and say, this morning, we did X, Y, and Z. Everybody silent and making these remarks and so on. So I'm going to cut off now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller.
Have a good day.
I very much appreciate, well, first your opinion on self-defense. I found that was interesting that you were willing to have such a strong opinion and state it. But also, yes, crime statistics. The TTPS has on their website, they publish crime statistics. Usually they might have been last year, maybe 2 months behind. Now they still haven't published anything for December, nothing for this year. So I'm not entirely sure what the slowdown is, because we are under the impression that the murder rate might actually be higher this year than last year. That was the initial impression the first 2 months. Now we're 4 months in, or 3 months and a half in. We don't necessarily know for sure, but that's the impression
I think the number
we're
of
getting.
murders for the month of April thus far are double the number that they were when compared to this time last year. I think last year around, was it yesterday or this morning, was around 11, and now it's 22 as we speak. The other side of it as well is, very good points raised by the caller.
Yes.
Would you trust, I mean, do you even trust statistics presented by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service? And would you trust more published statistics that I'm not entirely sure either?
Generally, yes, because what they did publish did not hide anything. It was not as though it made it look better, right? For the most part, it looked as what they published. It was plain. It was they gave us the bad news, and they even in the press conferences gave us the bad news. So I'll trust it. But my issue is now they seem to be slow rolling the further than even last year.
Not intended to be pessimistic.
I mean,
but
I understand.
Perhaps what they've published, just think about it. Again, I'm not trying to spew misinformation or misconstrue what could be facts. But what if what was published actually, it's bad, but is actually better
than reality.
Yeah.
I don't think there's that.
Remember, lots of crime goes unreported.
I don't think there's that.
A lot goes unreported.
Well, you see, that's a whole different topic. We have a caller waiting. Another caller from Chaguanas. Good morning, caller.
Hello.
Hi, good morning.
Good day, gentlemen.
So, do you want a weapon to defend yourself, Professor? Before you get into your point, you have to answer this question for me.
Which question?
Put it up on the screen for him to read it in case he can't hear me. But do you feel the need for self-defense weapons to protect your home? Do you want to have a weapon to protect yourself?
I always protect my home. I get to realize I live in Trinidad, the kind of government we have, and what they don't do. Because earlier in the week, you asked about when you turn on your pipe to get water. Every time I turn on my pipe, I get water.
That's
because
good.
I know who I'm dealing with. So I have two big tanks in my yard. I alone live in here. And one are bomb of level, so even if current gone, I could get on gravity feed. So we have to realize we have useless government. And although the purpose of government is one of the purposes to do things that we cannot do for ourselves. When they don't do it, then we have to do it for ourselves.
Well, thank you, Professor.
Your question.
Very good point.
What other point you wanted to make this morning for
My
us?
point was your last caller.
Right.
Which I agree with, is that we talk about digitization. I think I explained this to you sometime before. And digitization is just one aspect of the problem. The problem is proper use of the computer in management, especially data management. And we don't do the data management. The one thing she may not be aware of, I assume she is much younger than me, is that this was put into place by Dr. Eric Williams about 50 years ago, right, in which we were supposed to have a complete, we had the National Computer Agency, which is assessing all government agencies and a proper system. Of course, we closed down that. We were supposed to have unique parcel reference numbers, where every parcel of land and trail had a unique number you always deal with. Then one of the things came up was a unique personal number, which the government people recommended, and the public servants recommended to the politicians. We could use the ID card number, and who not entitled to that, we add on to that. And we use these things. That is what we complete data management. This is something we always had on them. That going back thousands of years in Britain.
I wonder if that
we had a computer which could make it much
easier.
Yeah.
Any questions, gentlemen?
No.
Well, Professor, if there is data management, is it that all records would have been kept if there is data management?
If what happened to the records? The records still there.
Okay, because in some instances, I have received reports that, some records...
Fire?
Well, I don't know what the fire is, but even records, for example, even with NIS, are not are missing. Individuals have their records, NIS doesn't.
Records is not supposed to be missing in the public service.
Yeah.
I hear the Ministry of Finance talking about the destroyed property taxes. Well, you do not destroy government data. Before you do that, you have to offer it to the archives. And the archives will normally keep a copy there before you are allowed to do that.
Yeah.
And what the agency should say, who destroyed it? Because I explained to you last week, when I was in government, these things were kept in 2 copies. And those days was hard copies. And the 2 copies were never kept in the same place. And even with computerization today, you can store things on the cloud.
Yeah.
So that in case of anything, you cannot talk about things. I know where the problem. The government went on a totally useless property tax system, which I explained to you on a number of occasions. Every year they keep going next year, and now they realize they cannot do it. So that is the latest excuse.
All right, Professor, thank you very much.
Yes, I think we don't disagree with the thoughts of both callers on digitization. And again, whenever I hear the government speak about digitization, it sounds a lot less informed than the two callers, right? With regards to what it means, what tasks are involved, what benefits could come about. Because it's like they're using words that are related to the topic, that they know are related to the topic, but they don't even necessarily understand. That's the politicians, when the politicians speak.
I will contribute. I have something to add to that. So, but we have a third caller from the beautiful area of Chaguanas this morning. Good morning. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Yes, this is a rejoinder call for the one I made earlier about digitization. And to make it clear, people have to understand computers are a tool. Technology, internet, they are tools. But what we are looking at is a real-time management system, meaning that people can punch and get the information they want. Getting statistics 3 months later and 1 year later isn't helping any of us. It just alarms us more, right? But if that is used in a way in real-time management system, then we'll be getting somewhere. Little steps. If you can track down the cars, for instance, or track down the places where the murders are taking place. And that's where the police have to get with it. They have to sit there. It has to be managed by somebody who is feeding the information to the officers and so on and so forth. Like I said, I'm not an expert, I am just saying from common sense, my little knowledge
of good observations.
So that's what I'm saying. And the professor is right. These things have been started. I mean, how many years now that the Minister of Finance stands up in Parliament and says, we're going to digitize Wi-Fi? Only tell me where the free Wi-Fi is and where it has been digitized.
Yeah. Yep. All right.
And the other part of it is management. People have to sit down there and be dedicated to managing that system so they can feed it to the officers and the police commissioner and others to see what decisions they need to make in real time. Don't give me statistics from 10 years ago. It's just get higher and higher.
Yes.
That's all I know.
Yeah. All right, Kola, thank you very much for your contribution.
That's a good point that she also made there with regards to sometimes you have to use statistics from 10 years ago because you don't have anything current.
I think the Prime Minister most recently took the approach where he said that any naysayers or commentators that are saying that digital transformation, a stall is not happening,
it's not happening.
That is far from the truth.
It's not happening.
I have spoken to a few individuals within the Ministry for Digital Transformation, and they can't speak due to NDAs and all public servants contracts, but I can't reveal their names or anything like that. But from what they have told me is that a lot is actually happening within the ministry, and a lot of work is being done. And even the minister, he has a lot of vision. He has a lot of things he wants to get done. Which ministry is this? Ministry of Digital Transformation.
Okay, all right. Okay.
So you see, and my immediate response to that is, okay, you're telling me this. That's you. I'm only privy to this because you're telling me this. No other citizen out there knows what is happening, what progress we've made, what we're doing, where we're going.
Here's the problem. They could do all the work they want, but they need to be accepted by the various ministries and institutions for it to work. We have San Fernando on the line. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. You have an answer first to the question of the day before you start?
No, for me, no. I tell people this, your house is normal households have a lot of protection implements against crime. People need to know how to use them. That is what I will say on that question.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
With respect to, I listened to Mrs. Watchmedia on the program there, and then the professor and the other caller talking about issues related to crime and one of the things that we need that needs to happen is that the police commissioner, I'm looking at it from another angle, the police commissioner needs to clean out the first 5 floors of the police administration building and get rid of rogue officers, get rid of corruption within the police service first, or in tandem with the other crime fighting issues, crime fighting plans that she has in place. If the crime fighting will not work if she does not do that, and I'm serious about that. And that is something that you gentlemen should investigate and understand what's happening within the police administration. that contributes to this crime wave that we have in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kolo. It may not necessarily be applicable, but I did step foot into the police administration.
Oh, okay.
Step foot.
Right. 1 foot.
One foot. One floor.
Okay.
And if what I witnessed speaks to the entire police administration on a whole, the most appropriate word, which I also think is the least in terms of strength, is depressing.
Oh, Lord. I mean, not surprising. We have the professor back with us. He wants to get one more word. And Professor, nobody disagree with you, but
yes, sir.
But you have a point.
Told you of all being done in the Ministry of Digital Transformation. Why didn't you ask them why it is not on their annual administrative report?
I'm sorry, it did not.
Because that is the whole purpose of the annual administrative report, so the people will be able to buy to whatever government want to do. That I guess I'll spit it in the wind as you.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Professor.
Professor, my apologies to
yes,
you.
Keita.
In that conversation, that was not the immediate thing that came to mind.
Because it's right, because you pointed out, nobody else hears about this. And why? Why is it that we can't? What is the big secret about digital transformation that they can't talk about it if stuff is... one would think you want to hide stuff not being done. But if stuff is being done, you have NDAs to protect that as well?
Listen, Estonia took 2 years. How long are we taking?
Rome was not built in a day, and we are not Rome, so we're going to take forever.
Listen, but I'm surprised we don't report the newspapers using hammers and chisels still. But you know.
Therein lies the other thing. We don't have publicized reports available to the public. We don't have the ability for people in ministries to... Look, because you're basically here saying the secret is they're doing a decent job, but they can't even talk about that. It just begs the question, what is it? Why does the stick have to be so far up the you-know-what that they say it's best that nobody speaks? Nobody speaks because we can't trust you to speak. So we will treat you like children. Just don't speak at all. Don't say anything. You have good news? You actually want to praise us? No, you can't even do that. Because, and I use that colorful language to say the immaturity of it. Right? This is not how you manage a professional entity. This is how you manage children in primary school. This is how you might have to manage prisoners. But this is not how you manage a professional entity where one would hope your employees and supervisors, etc., people working in your own organization would have some amount of buy-in in the vision and the plans and mission of the entity itself.
I would agree with you, but unfortunately, I must say that with what you just said, I'm not in total agreement. I would say yes, Sean, it's a very good example of this is not how you're supposed to manage, only if there actually was any level of management. And you get the impression that there isn't any level of management. Listen, giving somebody the title, head of this department, I'm the head of so-and-so, or I'm the manager of so-and-so, it's a title. It does not mean that they're capable of getting the job done, of managing it. But put it this way, be simple and straightforward. I don't get the impression that our leaders could make good managers in a private organization. But they're the top managers,
yes.
And look at where we are.
And, well, the irony, of course, is we've heard that this politician and that politician, who are not lawyers, who are businessmen, are good at that, but yet whatever management and administrative and human resource management skills that they have doesn't tend to seem to translate. I mean, basic concepts, because I can't remember if it was you who said it, if the professor said it, but the buy-in now for other stakeholders, right? If you are doing such a good job to push the agenda of digitization, but you can't even necessarily speak to the general public so they'll have an idea, how will other entities take you seriously? Because you just look like the guy in the corner, you know, installing the computer, not a process to digitize the country and the country's information.
Hello, good morning, I'm tech support.
basically. That's what it's going to boil down to.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for Talking Points.
By the way, some of the ministries, they need to get some tech support for their press conferences. Just saying the audio has been bad the last couple of times. Please, please, finance and public utilities, please, don't let that happen. I'm just saying, it's not a good look. We lose things, important information, and we can't hear it sometimes.
You finished?
Yeah.
Okay, this is it for Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. That's it for this edition. Have a good day, Sean Michael Small. Stay quiet. Stay quiet. I'm Keaton Shaw. Today is a good day to have a good day. And we'll see you again.
Have a quiet day, Keaton. Have a quiet day.
I tried. We'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
This May, the spectacular event you've been waiting for is coming. May 27th, celebrate amazing. North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Festival grounds, Blashy shares. Born here, played here.
WESN.
I'm Andy Johnson, and you're watching WESN, the content capital.
Varicose veins is a serious medical condition that causes significant pain and debility.
The varicose veins might appear because the body is trying to form alternative pathways. And next thing you know, you go and treat that, and you've left an undiagnosed DVT there, which can be life-threatening. And if you don't diagnose and treat that, then you're treating the varicose veins, but you ignore the big problem.
What's Up, Doc? Every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
The perfect mix of news, current affairs, talk, debate, mature discussions, comedy and sports. Only at WESN, the content capital.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through. Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
first time. The launch triggered an alarm in northern Japan, where residents were told to take shelter during the morning rush hour. Charlotte Hughes has this.